Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for your testimony. And, Mr. Chairman, I would like to take up the Secretary's suggestion that maybe we should have a classified briefing on the impact of sanctions and behavioral change. I think that would be instructive for the committee.
I know we had one in banking, and numbers of us attended that, and I think they, just for what it's worth, generally speaking, I don't think it's classified, said there hadn't been any behavior change, but maybe we should have that for this committee also, but go ahead.
So, Mr. Secretary, I think that that even listening to your response to the chairman's questions, I think we could generally agree, however, that despite our best efforts, both Congress's intentions to the laws that it has passed, the administration's enforcement of elements of that Russia continues to march on, though, both in destabilizing our democracy, other Western democracies, continues to have a frozen conflict in eastern Ukraine, continues to occupy Crimea, is engaged actively in Syria in a way that I think undermines our national interests. So is that a fair statement?
I think that is a fair statement, and I would just add to it what Director Coates said, the assessment of the intelligence community, that there is a pattern of a campaign and pattern of pervasive influence. It's not at 2016 levels, and the administration is responding to that with a clear-eyed strategy.
So if that is if we're agreed that it has not, at least as it relates to all those things, changed its course of conduct, do you support stronger sanctions on the Russian energy and banking sectors?
I support a continuation of the administration's current approach, which is to use the sanction authorities that we have. And I think we have a good track record to show for that.
If you had the ability to have stronger sanctions on Russia's energy and banking sectors, would you welcome it?
We make full review and use of all of the authorities at our disposal and are always assessing for new targets.
We had the Secretary of State here, and who was your boss, and he actually said that he welcomed as a result of my questioning, he welcomed, we didn't specify which one, but he welcomed a new round of sanctions as it relates towards Russia. I assume that you're in agreement with him.
I am. As I said, I would continue using the authorities that we have. I believe that we've got excellent authorities, and we always use the tools that Congress gives us. What I would say from the executive branch perspective and for effective diplomacy is we need discretion with those sanctions. So sanctions without discretion, in my mind, is the antithesis of strategy. We have to have the flexibility to use them in a manner that reflects diplomatic realities, and I think we've done a good job of that.
I get concerned when I have seen both this and previous administrations use waiver authority in a way that is far beyond discretion, undermines the intention of Congress, so we may have a different point of view as exactly how much discretion you end up having. Do you support the establishment of a sanctions coordination office at the State Department?
I would reserve opinion on that matter. I think we're looking internally at how best to continue coordinating sanctions in the days ahead. I think we've done a good job.
We've heard a lot of complaints from European governments about the lack of senior level coordination on sanctions. I'd like to commend it to your attention as well as the secretaries. Let me ask you both, do you support the establishment of a national fusion center to coordinate policy against malign actors across the whole of government?
I think there is something to the idea of a mechanism for increasing coordination within government. It's a problem that has a lot of different aspects. There's a cyber and technical aspect. There's a diplomatic and messaging aspect. There's an informational aspect. My caveat would be, I think it's important to go about this in a way that does not get in the swim lane of current lines of effort, which I would argue are doing a good job. So I think our team is preparing some structured feedback on the legislation that the ideas that we've seen in the bill.
We would look forward to that. Let me ask you this. Is it still the policy of the United States to not recognize the illegal annexation and occupation of Crimea?
Indeed.
I appreciate you saying that, because then I see the president go ahead and veto elements or say that the elements of the National Defense Authorization Bill where the president rejected Senate-approved language of non-recognition of the illegal annexation and occupation of Crimea. And that's worrisome for some of us. I don't know why you would do that when it is the policy, the stated policy of the administration. Also, the Secretary of State has said that. And then you get a different message sent by the president. Let me ask you one last question. Under the Chemical Biological Weapons Act, the administration imposed sanctions on North Korea for using chemical weapons against one of its own citizens, killing the brother of Kim Jong-un. The administration also designated North Korea a state sponsor of terror following that attack. Earlier this month, the administration sanctioned the Russian Federation under the CBW Act for using chemical weapons against one of its own citizens, a former spy, Sergei Skripal, and his daughter. You've not, however, designated the Russian Federation to be a state sponsor of terrorism. Why not? What's the substantive difference between these two situations?
Let me respond to the first part of what you've said, Senator. I think the administration has been crystal clear on Crimea. I see no daylight here. I would refer you to the president's comments in the interview yesterday when he said very clearly that every time he discusses Ukraine, he talks about Crimea. I think the Crimea Declaration speaks for itself, and we've been very strong in that regard. On the matter of designation of state sponsors,
I don't know why you reject the provision of the NDAA. It's just a codification of a view. I don't quite get it. It creates confusion in the world. But go ahead. Second part of my question.
On the second part of your question with regard to a state sponsor of terrorism, I think I don't want to get ahead of process. I think this is something that's always important to keep in our pocket. I think we're looking very carefully and sober-mindedly at Russian behavior in all regards. And CBW sanctions speak for themselves. Depending on how the Russians now respond, there could be a follow-on to that per the law. So I would just say we reserve to ourselves all options with regard to Russian behavior.
I just would say there's no differentiation between what happened in North Korea and the actions the administration took, which I applaud, and the Russian Federation. And there is no reason that we shouldn't employ all the uses that we have, because we need to deter the Russian Federation from undermining our elections and continuing to violate the international order. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.